Greetings, salutations, and welcome back, RP fam. Thank you guys for spending some time with me today. Now, I had to make a little bit of an adjustment. Usually I like to see all of the news injury-wise on Fridays when we get updates after practices before I do my rankings, and that is why I have moved my start sits to Saturdays. However, this weekend, my family and I are headed up to Seattle. We're gonna go check out the Seahawks and Panthers. My brother is a Carolina fan, so I have to move things around a little bit. I am not gonna be able to get those crucial updates prior to making this content. I'm recording this Friday morning. So I am going to do my best with the knowledge that I have. Still should be very solid, but that is why it's so important that you guys ask questions in the comments below. Drop them so that I can help you out. I will be checking updates, obviously, prior to kickoff on Sunday, so things might change a little bit from what I have in these rankings, but please ask the questions so I can help you guys out. We can go after some dubs in week number 3. With that all being said, I am covering every single position today, and I got tiers for you guys. Defense, special teams, kickers. I have quarterbacks, the top 25 for those in 2QB and Superflex leagues. Running backs, I'm going 1 to 36. That for wide receivers as well. And at tight ends, I have the top 16 options. So I am going to give you guys a full rundown, everything you need to crush your opponents this weekend. We were really hot last week. I am hoping that I can keep that momentum for you guys in this coming week. We're going to start with my defense and special teams. And number 1 is the Dallas Cowboys. They get the Cardinals this week. Going to be another monster performance for Dallas. Patriots are at 2. I think that they absolutely crush Zach Wilson's soul. It's going to be a big day for that team on defense as well. In tier 2, I have the Browns and Tennessee. And then the other side of the coin in the Jets game against New England, I think that New York looks a lot better this week and has no trouble containing Mac Jones and company. This is going to be a low-scoring affair. Vegas agrees with me. The over-under is set at 36.5. The Chiefs round out my top 5. Love them in a matchup against Chicago. This could be a sort of coming out party for them after they held Jacksonville to 9 total points. Tier 3 is the Bills, Ravens, Jaguars, Saints. Finishing my top 10, I have the Miami Dolphins defense, which has looked off and on so far this year. Not super afraid of Denver, however. Tier 4, I have the Eagles. They've dropped a little bit for me. I want to see that passing defense respond. They travel to Tampa Bay, and right now that passing attack has been better than expected, so a little bit of a test unexpectedly at this point for the Eagles. The Steelers are my last number 1 defense in a 12-team league. They go on the road to Vegas this week. They were the number 1 defense overall last week. They scored twice in that big victory over Cleveland. They forced 9 sacks in the 2 games they've played thus far. They've also recovered 4 fumbles. So they are a big play creating team. I like them to stuff the stat sheet once again against the Raiders. The Bengals, underperforming a little bit this year. They're at 13. And my 5th and final tier is the Seahawks, Packers, and finally the Raiders, if you have to. But hopefully you have a better defense option. Into my kickers now. Justin Tucker, as usual, is in at 1 against Indy. That defense hasn't looked great, and the Ravens offense is just getting started. Younghoe Koo is at 2 against Detroit, and at 3 I have Riley Patterson. My 4th ranked kicker is Harrison Butker. I think this might be the game that Patrick Mahomes lets it rip a little bit. He has struggled mightily through the first 2 weeks of the season, at least statistically. Lots of points for the Chiefs here, and Butker capitalizes. To my 2nd tier, Brandon Aubrey is a top 5 play. Dallas is going to score points. Cameron Dicker, the kicker, against Minnesota at 6, and Jake Elliott is in at 7. For tier 3, Daniel Carlson starts it off, and Tyler Bass is at 9. Rounding out my top 10, I have Greg Joseph. He is at home against the Chargers. I think both him and Dicker are awesome options. This is a clear must-win game for both teams. trying to avoid going to 0-3. A ton of points are going to be scored. We have a kicker-friendly environment in US Bank Stadium. Both these guys are going to have opportunities. Tier 4 starts with Evan McPherson. A little bit of trepidation here because of Joe Burrow's situation. Brandon McManus is at 12 to round out my number 1 kickers, and Jason Sanders just fits outside of it at 13. My 5th and final tier, I have Joey Sly, Chris Boswell, and finally Will Lutz. Before I hit quarterbacks, like the video, subscribe to the channel. So close to our first 1,000 subs. If you haven't done it yet, join us on the journey. We would love to have you. Patrick Mahomes is the front runner this week. He has that great matchup with Chicago. At 2, I have Josh Allen. He is going to provide an excellent encore after he exploded. As predicted, he was my number 1 quarterback last week. The Commanders' secondary has been an absolute dumpster fire, so I expect chunk plays and top shelf numbers once again. Jalen Hurts is in at 3 in that matchup with the Bucs, and I have Lamar Jackson up at 4 against Indy. He has not had the numbers quite yet to back up the solid play that we have seen from him. Lamar is 8th in passing grade, 9th in yards per attempt, and he's also 6th in big time throw rate. He is a great buy right now because after he decimates Indy this week, his value is going to skyrocket. At the top of tier 2, rounding out my top 5 quarterbacks, is Tua Tagovailoa. The preacher is a flat-out stud. He's 1st in passing grade, 1st in yards per attempt, 2nd in big-time throw rate right now. Pure and utter domination, more or less. Denver also just got lit up by Sam Howell, and they're allowing the league's 4th highest passer rating. They've also allowed the 7th highest yards per attempt while pressuring quarterbacks at the 2nd lowest clip. So we're going to add this up. You are giving up big plays to Tua. You are not going to pressure him. You have a problem. Tua could be the QB1 overall for the 2nd time in the first 3 weeks. Justin Herbert is next at 6. And in that same game, Kirko Chains is in at 7 in what should be a QB duel. I think Herbie probably looks better, but Kirko can always explode, which we have seen twice this year. He is the current overall QB1. At the top of tier 3, I have Trevor Lawrence. I know he let us down last week, but T-Law is 2nd in passing grade and 1st in big time throw rate. He is going to repay us here with a big game against Houston. Dak Prescott is up at 9. I just love the matchup against Arizona. Maybe they let him do a little bit more than just game managing this week. I like my chances because the other matchups as we move down this list just get tougher and tougher. Rounding out my top 10, I have Jared Goff. This dude is top 5 in passing grade, yards per attempt, and adjusted completion rate. I know that Atlanta's defense is legit, but the Gofffather should continue to spread the ball around behind an elite offensive line. They keep giving him time, and he keeps dialing it up. He is forever underrated and deserves this top 10 spot. My 4th tier gets a little shaky. I start at 11 with Deshaun Watson. He has not looked good so far, so he needs to turn it around in this game against a beatable Titans secondary. Tennessee has allowed the 4th highest yard per attempt, 8th highest passer rating, and they're also giving up QB1 numbers on the season. So if Watson wants to keep any believers moving forward, this is the game for him to do it in. I personally have not lost faith yet. I believe Watson gets right. And speaking of gets right, my last QB1 in week 3 is Justin Fields. If you do not trust him, believe me, I get it. But other options, as I've said, this week are not very good. And after what has been said in the media, I think that he plays more like himself, takes off a little bit more against the Chiefs. He's probably going to also throw a couple deep balls, one of the few things he's been able to be successful at in the passing game, at least consistently. We have seen the massive upside. It's why many of us spent top picks on him. And if you drafted him, week 3 is way too early to give up on him. Bounce back week here for Fields. Geno Smith is my lucky number 13. I'm going to go see him against Carolina. Tier 5 has Russell Wilson up at the top. This is the highest Russ has been for me in probably 10, 12 weeks at least worth of rankings. But he's at 14 and he has looked much different this year after last season's disaster. He is the QB 5 overall in fantasy right now. He's right ahead of Tua actually, and he ranks top 10 in big time throw rate as well as adjusted completion rate. And remember, he has done this with Jerry Jeudy and other wide receivers either out, injured, or banged up in general. Miami has been mediocre against the pass this year, so I think that Wilson can continue to utilize his skill position players to rack up points. Matthew Stafford has been slinging it. The numbers in fantasy land haven't truly followed him, but I think he's fine here against Cincinnati. And I have Sam Howell up at 16 against Buffalo. This guy is a top 12 quarterback in fantasy right now, QB 11 and QB 14 in the first 2 weeks. At the top of tier 6, I have Baker Mayfield, and right behind him is Derek Carr. He travels to Green Bay. Now, Carr could hit big for us this week if he can connect on some deep shots, and that is really the vulnerability in the Packers secondary. They've allowed the 10th highest passer rating, the 4th highest adjusted completion rate when they are defending against deep passes. Last year, that has carried over, and that is exactly what Derek Carr does. This guy has the most deep shots taken in the entire league, and the top rate as well. So he has QB1 upside, but also a very shaky floor if he cannot connect. My 19th ranked quarterback is now official. It is Gardner Minshew. It looks like Anthony Richardson, RIP Richie Rich this week, is going to be out. So Minshew takes the reins. I think he's fine against Baltimore because that secondary is weak, but I do not expect exploding volcano numbers from him. CJ Stroud is at the top of tier 7, followed closely, not excitedly, by Kenny Pickett and Mac Jones. Way down at 23, I have Jordan Love, who's been a top 5 quarterback so far this year, but this is the week to sit him down. He is almost a must sit against this brutal Saints defense. New Orleans has allowed 16 total fantasy points in 2 games at the quarterback position, and right now Love's touchdown rate is flat out not sustainable. He is 28th in passing attempts, 26th in passing grade, and he's also bottom 10 in big time throw rate. He is going to come back down to earth here, and he might look ugly doing it. My 8th and final tier starts with Jimmy Garoppolo, and rounding out my top 25 and the last quarterback I have is Desmond Ridder. If you're starting him even against this Detroit defense, you are likely in trouble this week. My running back start with someone other than Christian McCaffrey this week for the first time in forever, and that's because he already played on Thursday night. So at my 1-1, I have Tony Pollard. He is the guy. He's averaging 25 touches per game, nearly 100 total yards of offense. He is also first in the league at the position in expected fantasy points, and he's just going to stroll right into a monster day against Arizona. Tier 2 starts with Derrick Henry. He's averaging over 22 touches and 105 total yards as a top 12 option at the position thus far. Cleveland has the highest missed tackle allowed rate. That is certainly something that King Henry can take advantage of. He had a 71% snap rate last week, which is huge because in week 1 it was 45%, so we put those concerns to rest. It may not be pretty for Henry this week, but one way or another, he will bring the production. Bijan Robinson is next at 3. He already has over 250 total yards through 2 weeks, and he has moved to workhorse usage with a 72% snap share in week number 2. Bijan will continue to roll. Tier 3 has Joe Mixon way up at 4. He's at the top of the tier, and he is set up to destroy this Rams front. LA is allowing the highest yards per carry to zone runs, and more than half of Mixon's runs come on zone plays. His workhorse usage and that 14% target share mean a monster day is coming. At 5, I have Travis Etienne. Bounce back game from him here against Houston. And at 6 is Ja, Gibby, whatever other pet name you want to call him. He is a must start this week if David Montgomery is out. Now, we have seen conflicting reports on the situation so far. Remain vigilant, checking for updates. And also, if he's available for trade in your league, which I don't know why he would be, had him as a buy in week 2, but go get this dude if you can. At 7, I have Kenneth Walker. He boasts a top 6 ranking in missed tackles forced per attempt, and he also gets a plus matchup against Carolina. I think he continues to lead this backfield, likely benefits from a positive game script as well, especially at home. My next tier starts with Ramondre Stevenson, and all the way up at 9 in my top 10 for the first time is James Cook. He travels to Washington. He has a stranglehold on this RB1 role in Buffalo. Guy is averaging 18.5 touches and 111 total yards per game, and he hasn't even scored yet. So imagine if he gets any sort of goal line role. Spoiler alert, massive upside for him. Lock him in this week. Tier 5 has Josh Jacobs up at number 10. He will bounce back against the Steelers. Pittsburgh has allowed the 6th highest missed tackles and also the highest rate of yards after contact per attempt. So if I'm trying to speak English for you, they are not very good against the run. My 11th ranked player at running back is Raheem Mostert. He is in line for yet another productive day. He has dominated the touches in the backfield for Miami, and he's racking up yardage as a top 10 play to this point. He should end near that milestone yet again this week. Denver has had trouble stopping the ground game. They're allowing the 10th most yards per carry in zone runs. Mostert just so happens to utilize those types in over 60% of his touches, so I love him to stay hot. The last RB1 I have is none other than Kyren Williams. Welcome to the club, my friend. You have earned it. Tier 6 starts with Aaron Jones. He should be locked in if he's healthy enough to go even against this tough Saints defense, and that is because his passing game work will carry him. Up at 14, I have DeAndre Swift. However, he could drop a couple of tiers if Kenneth Gainwell does indeed go. But if he is the only show in town like he was last week, then Swifty will crush once again. My top 15 ends with Brian Robinson Jr. He is all about the volume. B-Rob is averaging 20 touches and almost 100 total yards per game, but he continues to look just mediocre outside of the stat sheets. I don't think the ceiling is very high in this game against the Bills, but the floor for him is going to prevent him from busting. My 7th tier starts with Alexander Mattison. He has not looked great, and the competition just got hotter with the Vikings acquiring Cam Akers. But I expect him to go down fighting this week against the Chargers. They're a bottom 10 team against the run this year. The volume will be enough for a decent showing, especially with Minnesota's touchdown upside. At 17 is Isaiah Pacheco. He is a must start if he is good to go against the Bears. Chicago's defense has been a tragedy so far this year. At 18 is Miles Sanders. Now, he might be in for a long day because Seattle has the 6th highest stuff rate in the league, and they have dominated against zone running plays. That is pretty much all that Sanders runs, over 65%. So he is going to have to depend on his volume to carry him through, but we know he's the bell cow back there, so I think he will be fine. Speaking of bell cows, at 19 is James Conner. Terrible matchup with Dallas, but he's going to get all the looks and then some. Gus Edwards rounds out my top 20. He does have a shot to be the unquestioned lead back, depending on what we hear about Justice Hill. So if that happens, full speed ahead on the Gus bus. He probably becomes a top 15 play. Tier 8 has Najee Harris at the top. This guy is falling week in and week out. At 22, I have Javonte Williams. He continues to be eased into this offense. 45% snap share both in weeks 1 and 2. He is, though, averaging 15 touches, nearly 60 total yards per game. You have to like that early on. He is 3rd on the team in target share as well, 6th in receiving grade as far as running backs are concerned. Those are all positives. So if that work continues to come, especially against this Dolphins defense, they allowed the 7th most yards to the position last year. He could be in for a surprising day. Joshua Kelly is at 23, and at 24, my last RB2 is Zach Moss. At 25, I have Rachaad White. The matchup here is brutal, and White has looked pretty ineffective in most metrics, but his volume does make him flex worthy. There is a lot of bust chance in this play as well, though. Tier 9 starts with Jerome Ford against a very good Tennessee front. I love the player and the skills that he just showed after that Nick Chubb injury, but I think this is a week he takes a back seat. A.J. Dillon is at 27. He is a must-sit if Aaron Jones plays, and a top 25 option if he doesn't. At 28 is Tony Jones Jr. He just might get a full workhorse role because Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller are both dealing with injuries. He is a pure volume flex play who could pop off if he breaks a couple runs. Green Bay has allowed the third highest rate of 10-plus yard runs this season. Jaylen Warren keeps moving up. He's at 29 now. He's becoming more and more relevant by the week, and he's an excellent stash if you have an extra roster spot. Tyler Algier rounds out my top 30 against Detroit, and way down at 31, I have Dameon Pierce. He is not getting the majority of snaps for Houston, just a 46% share. He's also been woefully inefficient with the touches he is getting. 15 a game. You'll love that. But 41 total yards per game with those touches, that's less than 3 yards a touch. That's not going to work. We know the O-line here is bad. He's got multiple threats to his workload, so he is a risky flex at best. Breece Hall is down at 32. Really tough matchup with New England. And in my 10th and final tier, I have Justice Hill, if he plays, and then Khalil Herbert at 34. At 35 is Dalvin Cook. He's averaged more snaps and touches for the Jets so far as they continue to ease Breece Hall back in, but he has been a shell of his former self. The good news, he does have the red zone work pretty much all to himself, but that and about 12 touches a game in this Jets offense is about all that he offers. The last running back I have in week number 3 is Samaje Perine. He travels to Miami. Transitioning to wideouts, I have Justin Jefferson at 1, and at 2 I have Tyreek Hill. Spoiler alert, this guy is good at football. After a down week against New England, I think Hill will be looking to crush a beatable Denver secondary. There is no way he is held to under 100 total yards. My second tier starts with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, he could be dealing with turf toe, but he is a must start if active against the Falcons. Josh Reynolds, who's dealing with an injury of his own, becomes a wide receiver 2 if St. Brown cannot play. Number 4 is CeeDee Lamb. He's got a good matchup on the road against Arizona. And rounding out my top 5 is A.J. Brown. He has not quite exploded just yet, but for whatever reason, this is the game I feel like he does. Maybe it's the squeaky wheel situation. Maybe it's just his turn. Whatever it is, big game for AJ here. At the top of tier 3 is Keenan Allen. He will decimate whatever coverage he has at US Bank Stadium. He could match last week's insane output when he had 110 yards and a pair of scores. Stephon Diggs is next at 7. He has the 6th highest first read share among wideouts. Basically, that means Josh Allen cannot wait to get him the ball. He is a smash play. Devontae Adams is at 8, good matchup against Pitt, and the top of tier 4 starts with Devontae Smith. He travels to Tampa. The last wide receiver in my top 10 is Jalen Waddle. Now, he is in concussion protocol right now and could be out. He is a must start if he's cleared, but if he's in your lineups, make sure by Sunday morning. Puka Nacua is at 11, and rounding out my wide receiver ones, I have Calvin Ridley. He will put up numbers closer to what he did in week 1 than he did in week 2 against this vulnerable Texans secondary. T-Law is looking to Agent Zero in the red zone. The only one he has looked to other than Ridley in the red zone is Zay Jones, and he is banged up, so the sky is the limit this week. Tier 5 has Chris Olave at the top. He is a locked-in alpha and is the current wide receiver 15 in fantasy land. He leads the Saints with a 40% target share and a 41% air yard share, and he should continue to get fed in this offense. There is a little bit of concern here with Jair Alexander, but he could just as easily shadow Michael Thomas. At 14 is Mike Williams. He's going to have plenty of looks as the 1B in this offense. Weak winning upside for him way down here at 14. At 15, I have Tyler Lockett, and my 16 and 17 players are the brothers in Cincinnati, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. They probably do not get Joe Burrow in this one as he deals with that calf injury. So I understand you wanting to bench them, but they do have the talent to overcome the quarterback situation. They are not must starts, but if I am an owner, I am playing them. Tier 6 starts with the brothers in Tampa. It's Mike Evans and Chris Godwin at 18 and 19. And then my last player, my top 20, is Amari Cooper. He looked plenty healthy regardless of what his injury designation was last week. He should continue to build up that momentum. He had a 10-target, 7-catch performance against the Steelers. Cooper will run the majority of his routes against very weak coverage, so he could post top 10 numbers. 21, I have DK Metcalf, and I have George Pickens right after him. He is a great option as long as Deontay Johnson's remains sidelined. He has a 30% target share, an incredible 66% air yard share, and an eye-popping 4.54 yards per route run last week. Elite numbers. Tier 7 starts with DJ Moore. He is the go-to in the passing game for Chicago, and you know I'm in on Justin Fields this week. Moore's got a 3.25 yards per route run, also a 30% first read rate. Those are elite, and Darnell Mooney is banged up and dealing with a knee injury. Nico Collins is my last wide receiver 2. He's getting wide receiver 1 usage. And at 25 is Michael Pittman Jr. I really don't think the move to Gardner Minshew is going to hurt him. If anything, it might help him because of Minshew's passing abilities. Jerry Jeudy is next at 26. He does not have great metrics so far, but he was a first read for Russell Wilson in one of 3 dropbacks last week. That is very encouraging. So his usage was good, and then Courtland Sutton basically fell flat on his face trying to take that wide receiver 1 job. So Jeudy does not have a real threat to true alpha usage, and this could be a takeoff week for him. Tier 8 begins with Jordan Madison. He keeps forcing Kirk Cousins to feed him, and it feels like pretty soon he is going to be forcing us to put him in our lineups. This offense certainly runs through Jet and Hawk, but Addison has a 2.15 yards per route run. That screams playmaker. I'm buying the upside, and like I said, what should be a shootout with an over-under of 54. Terry McLaurin is at 28 against Buffalo, and way down at 29 is Garrett Wilson. Sell him, sell him, sell him if you can. Drake London is at the top of tier 9, and at 31 I have DeAndre Hopkins. I do not love this matchup or the fact that Nuke is still dealing with an ankle injury. His floor is probably okay, because who else are you going to throw to? Sorry, Traylon Burks. But I do not see much of a ceiling for Hopkins here. Zay Flowers is at 32. He could see increased usage because OBJ is dealing with an ankle injury, and Flowers ranks 16th in receiving grade and yards per route run right now. He has high-end wide receiver 2 upside against this Colts D. Christian Kirk, after a big week last week, I think comes back down to earth a little bit, but he's a good dart throw against Houston. Michael Thomas, same here, looks pretty vintage so far. He's also 6th in the league in red zone targets. Very valuable, so he is a decent dart throw with that touchdown upside. My 10th and final tier at 35 is Tutu Atwell. He's top 20 in receiving grade and yards per route run as well, so he is well worthy of a shot in your flex if you are desperate. And at 36 is Gabe Davis. He could boom here in a good matchup against Washington. I want to get in my tight ends. First, I need to breathe and remind you to like and subscribe. Get us to 1,000. I greatly appreciate all my current subscribers. Tight ends start with who else? Travis Kelce. He is number 1 in tier 1 forever when he plays. Tier 2 is Mark Andrews at the top. He gets Indy. And at 3, I have TJ Hawkinson. He is the overall tight end 1 right now. Nearly a 20% target share, 3rd in receiving grade at the position. The Bolts can't stop anything whatsoever through the air, so Hawk likely continues to roll. Tier 3 starts with Dallas Goedert, and my top 5 ends with Evan Ingram. 21% first read share for him, nearly an 18% target share. He's got an ascending star quarterback. Those numbers will do just fine. Ingram ranks top 6 in receiving grade and yards per route run at the position, and he is probably the one who's going to benefit the most from Zay Jones' injury. At the top of tier 4 is the rookie Sam Laporta. Some people call him Sammy Ballgame, and I do like that. He's dominated as the overall tight end 6, ranking top 6 in receiving grade and yards per route run. The Falcons have allowed top 7 numbers, both in passing yardage and fantasy points to tight ends last year, so I am all in on Sammy posting another tight end 1 showing. Lock this guy in with confidence. David Njoku is up at 7. This one is about the matchup. If he doesn't have to block too much, he could post a solid stat line. At tier 5, it begins with Kyle Pitts. He has struggled so far as the tight end 32 in fantasy to this point, but he does have a 16% target share and a 34% air yard share. Now, those numbers have not materialized into production, but they are not bad. Detroit is a get-right spot here and a good roll of the dice. Jake Ferguson is up at 9, solid usage so far this year, and rounding out my top 10, I have Tyler Higbee. My 11th ranked tight end is Pat Freiermuth. Freiertuck is a solid start in this matchup. Vegas has allowed top 5 numbers to the position, and let's be honest, this passing game needs playmakers. At number 12, I have Adam Troutman. He is my last tight end 1 this week, and he gets the nod here because the matchup is too good to ignore. The Dolphins refuse to stop opposing tight ends. They couldn't last year, and they have not improved upon it in 2023. Troutman has decent enough usage to take advantage, and a touchdown is really all you need at this wasteland of a position. At 13, I have Hayden Hurst against Seattle on the road, and Cole Kmet is up at 14. My 15th ranked tight end is Juwan Johnson. He has flashed the tight end 1 traits that made him a late season staple in 2022. His target and first read shares are not awesome, but they're not horrible either. He's got a banged up backfield as well, so Johnson could get more work than usual. Plus, the Packers have surrendered top 12 numbers to tight ends. I have Durham Smythe as my last tight end. He travels on the road to Denver. And that is all that I have for you guys for week 3 start sit. I really hope you guys enjoyed the content. I'm sorry I couldn't get as in-depth and precise as I wanted to be, but that is why we ask the questions. I promise I will get back to you. I answer every comment and question that I receive. Like the video if you would be so kind. Subscribe to the channel to keep moving forward with us. This is Relentless Press. I am your humble host, Adrian Opatz, and I will see you next time.